Okay, well, we can begin now. I'd like to welcome all the parents and the community members that are attending tonight. This is our third Revere High School community meeting. And we've been focusing the first three meetings, or including this meeting, on the grading changes that are taking place at Revere High School. Just to recap, our first meeting was really sort of a historical review of a traditional grading system and how it has been evolving into what we call a mastery-based grading system. The second community meeting that we held was really focused on the perspective of the teacher. And we were fortunate enough to have a few teachers present their perspective in the classroom and what it looks like on a daily basis for teaching and learning. And tonight we are very honored to have guests ranging from district administrators as well as representatives from some of the best colleges around that we often send our students to. And tonight we'll be looking at the grading changes from that perspective, specifically of getting into college and how colleges view our grading system and our transcripts. I like to remind everyone of a few different components here. First, we are right now streaming live. So if those of you who are unable to watch it in full, this will be available on the Revere Public School Committee YouTube account, YouTube page. Also, there will be a question and answer section at the end where we will be able to field some questions from some of the, you can pose questions on the chat or in the question section, and we can do that as well. We also will be providing an update at the end of this presentation on the upcoming webinars that we'll be holding and what the focuses will be. So at this point, I'd like to introduce the architect of the Revere High School master schedule and the guidance guru herself. This is Miss Diana Finn. Miss Finn has been a student, a teacher, a guidance counselor, and now a director in Revere High School. She's awesome, and I appreciate her being a partner with her. And she's going to sort of walk us through tonight a little bit of the introduction on some of the grading changes from a transcript perspective. And then she will introduce some of our visitors and guests from colleges. Thank you. Ms. Finn.
Thank you, John. I am just going to share my screen and our presentation tonight. Beginning. So my first job here, I'm going to be giving you some background context before we engage in the panel discussion with our higher ed partners. So the list here in front of you is 5 of the big pieces of a college application that we submit to colleges. The first is the common application, which is submitted by the student and in conjunction with the guidance counselor. The transcript, which we will focus on in our next slide, and especially the changes that we will see comparing last year to this year's class of 2021. Standardized test scores, including SAT and ACT, recommendations sent in by guidance counselors, written by counselors and by teachers, and then a personal essay, and in some cases a resume submitted to colleges. So those are the school forms that are submitted on behalf of students and that admissions counselors review. So the next slide here on the left, that shows the year-by-year progression that a student could go through at Revere High School. So starting with, as you'll see, the year 16-17 through last year's graduating class. A transcript lists out all of the courses chronologically, and then final grades, including credit that is awarded for each of the courses. To the right of that list, you'll see total units. Those are credits that are earned, cumulative GPA over 4 years, and then lastly, class rank. One thing you'll notice that we included after last year was due to COVID-19, a note to the sending schools that our students engaged in remote learning, and just an explanation as to what MC met competency or not yet did not meet competency means on a transcript since that was a change in how we communicated grades via our school profile earlier in the year. So this is what a transcript would look like for the class of 2020. For this year's graduating class, since first semester isn't over yet and we don't have an exemplar to show you here, I highlighted 3 examples that I'll go through. If you see English 11 honors listed there and then an A minus with 1 credit. This year, we are heterogeneously grouped in our core classes. So on this year's transcript, English 11 will stand alone saying English 11, and then students have the opportunity to earn A honors, B honors, C honors, and then A, B, C, D, N, A, N, Y, as you see on the grade point average on the bottom center of the slide there. So when colleges see our transcript from here on out, they will see the course, and then if a student earned honors weight within their final grade, it will designate on the transcript AH, BH, CH, and that GPA with honors weight will be calculated into their grade point average. And the same thing for the other 2 that are highlighted there, physics honors and English 10 honors would be physics. And then if the student earned honors credit, it would be AH, for example, in physics, and English 10 would be AH in addition. If there are individual questions you have about your student's transcript, whether they are a senior or an underclassman, you can certainly reach out to their individual guidance counselor to explain their transcript to you if you want something that is more personalized. And before we engage in our discussion now, I wanted to share information around our school profile. This is a 2-page document that I update yearly to include information around our student population, our schedule, if anything has changed within our schedule, like it did last semester and second semester of last year, our grading scale, and it will document how our grading scale will evolve over the years, graduation requirements, standardized testing information, that means averages within classes, and post-secondary placement for the previous year, what colleges and universities in particular students were accepted into. In addition, there it does give the marking system. It explains the grade point average, the weighted grade point average associated with final grades. If anyone does want to see the full 2-page profile, it is on our Revere High School guidance website. It's also on all students' Naviance individual pages for parents and guardians to look at from there. The school profile in general gives admissions offices the context and a picture of what our school represents without them being here and knowing it. Every high school is so different, and it gives us a way to share what our school represents and what we stand for in a short 2-page document. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to Tiffany Curry, our coordinator of external learning opportunities, who will introduce our partners in higher ed who are here for their panel discussion.
Hi, well, thank you, Diana. I'd like to introduce our representatives tonight. We're fortunate to have them, so welcome. Ashley O'Donnell is the admissions counselor and dual enrollment coordinator at Bridgewater State University. Mike Drish is the director of first-year admissions at University of Massachusetts Amherst. We have Rafi Maroy, the director of international admissions at Suffolk University, and Zoe Carter, the senior assistant director of admissions from Boston University. So we've asked each of them to share in about 3 or 4 minutes a little bit about how they review students for admission at their institution, as well as what do they look for in a student profile and a student application for admission. So we'll kind of go down the line and start with Ashley.
Hi, my name's Ashley. In terms of how Bridgewater looks at a profile, we do try to look at all the pieces that come in off of that application. So the first piece we do look at is the transcript and especially the grades. We are very much aware with COVID that the junior year marking period is going to look a little different for a lot of students and a large variety of different ways in terms of how the transcript is going to come across our desk. So we do look overall GPA. Being public, we do try to look for 3.0 cumulative GPA or higher. We do look at that honors weight. So if you have that AH on it, we will be giving you that honors weight. So don't worry that like honors are no longer available to you. You will still have honors as an option with that grading scale. Same with if you were taking an advanced placement course, we will still honor the advanced placement weight. So we are still going to give you those weighted GPA components. What is nice that if you are not yet passed, we're not going to necessarily put a failing grade into your GPA calculation. We'll just pass over that and then see, how you do the next marking period. So we do kind of look at those pieces. After that, we do sometimes look at test scores if students send them. We're a test optional school for all our programs. So if you don't have test scores available because of the pandemic, because you are unable to take your SAT or ACTs, it's not really an issue on our end. We have a lot of students who choose and elect to go test optional. If you have test scores available and you want to send them, that's great as well. It's really up to you. What I've been tending to recommend to students is if they are below the 3.0, if they don't have test scores available, to really think about sending supplemental information. So that would be recommendation letters, personal essay, and we are doing interviews this year for the first time. And part of that is because of the pandemic, because of the lack of SAT scores. And what might be even great for your students is that with this new grading scale, it does get us to have that opportunity to talk to you face-to-face and answer any concerns you might have about the process as well. So that's kind of how we're looking at an application. We do look at all of those components. So it's not just the transcript and just the GPA. We are looking at all those pieces that come in.
Thank you, Ashley. That's really helpful. Mike Drish, the Director of First Year Admissions at UMass Amherst.
Thank you, Tiffany. And it's great to be here tonight. So hello to everyone. It's always, these are so tough when we can't see everyone out there, but we know you're here. So thanks for being a part of the program. Happy to talk a little bit about how we go about application review at UMass. So the first thing to know is that we use a term called holistic review. And holistic review basically means that we look at everything a student submits as a part of their common application. So anything we're asking about through the application is fair game for our admission review and selection process. We are a large public university that gets a large volume of applications, but every single application is thoroughly reviewed. We put the time and effort with our staff and readers to ensure that that's the case. And we look at all achievements. So just like you heard from Ashley, academic performance in school is one of many factors that we're considering in our admission process. It does not determine who will gain admission solely, because as I mentioned, a holistic process means we're looking at everything in the application. We are looking for students who are both engaged in kind of what they're doing academically, in addition to whatever they do outside of the classroom. That could be in their school, it could be in their community, in their religious community, at home, work experience, you name it. It's a wide range of ways that we're looking for students to be engaged. But as you'll hear from most college admissions representatives, academic achievement is a key component of our review process. And it's important what we're talking about tonight because we look at the academic transcript to determine what a student has done in their high school setting. But we don't look at the transcript alone. You saw the profile or have heard talk about the profile. Most high schools provide a profile, and our readers look at that profile when they're reviewing the transcript. So the two go hand in hand because that context is so important. We know that every high school is different. Every high school has different opportunities, different courses, they're different sizes, different learning environments. We know that there are all kinds of different obstacles that students have faced as a result of the pandemic. So we look to the school to understand what kind of how the pandemic has affected students and their courses or their grades or things along those lines. And in the case of what you've been talking about over tonight and in past town halls, We look to the profile to understand grading scales and how schools are grading students in their courses. And we don't benefit nor hold that against the student. This is the school they attend. That's the grading scale. Those are the courses offered. Those are the opportunities available to the student. We look at it within the context of the school they attend. And in addition to that, we look at other factors, as I mentioned, activities, work experience, the essay that they write, common questions we may ask on the Common App, a letter of recommendation, and sometimes certain majors at UMass will have supplemental materials such as our music majors or portfolios or things like that. So a lot goes into the admission review and the admission decision. It's not just a GPA. It's not just a grade. It's not just a test score. UMass Amherst is test optional this year and will be for the next 3 years. Testing is not a big factor in the admission decision. It's this wide range of factors we consider to truly know whether or not a student will succeed in our university setting. And there are differences between every university setting. And so that's what usually guides our admission review and selection process.
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to move on to Rafi Maroy, the Director of International Admissions at Suffolk University.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. And if I don't mind, I think you may start hearing similar terms being used by many of us. So I do appreciate some of Mike's comments about holistic admissions, because that is truly, I think, at the crux of a lot of our, admissions review policies, and something that I will certainly talk a little bit about also. A few things that I want to point out about, Suffolk's review process is that we do also follow what's known as the territory management or case management type of procedures, which means that we divide the state, we divide the country into different territories that are assigned to specific counselors. And I say this because there is a person, my colleague Ellie, she is the one who would be reviewing for Revere High School. But it also translates into the fact that we try to become experts in our own areas, know our sending schools, which Revere is certainly one of them. We try to make sure that we understand everything that is the nuances of all the different aspects of that particular institution or high school. So that is certainly something that we also put in part of as our review process, so we understand everything in the context of yourself, within your curriculum, within your school. We also again, truly believe in a holistic management type of application process. So as the other speakers have been saying, we look at every other aspect, but of course, academics are kind of the anchoring point, the place where we actually spend a lot of time looking at your overall application and overall who you are as a student. And it means going way past the GPA, and way past, all of those areas. It's looking at your curriculum, the strength of it, the challenging courses that you have decided to take. Are you taking a more challenging curriculum versus some of your other peers in your same graduating class? Evidence of trying to see if you have resiliency and if you have grit. So all of these different aspects of a transcript are being looked at. So the transcript is dissected in a number of different ways. And holistic admissions for us at Suffolk means also more than just looking at all the elements within the application, but also the tools available to us as admissions counselors, in terms of how we actually admit students. So what I maybe sometimes call different types of admissions. We have our regular admissions process in which most of our students, 50% of applicants come in that way, typically hitting about a 3.3 GPA, 1100 the SATs. But then we also have a type of admissions into our honors college, which is our most competitive type of admissions. The top 30% of our applicant pool, usually a little bit students who have demonstrated a higher, more competitive academic performance throughout their 4 years of high school. But then maybe you're a student who maybe freshman year doesn't look too great, but sophomore year looks a lot better. Junior year looks very solid. You have that upward trend that we're looking in the transcript. That is still a positive way that we would like to admit. And for those type of students, we have our SU Advantage program that actually takes advantage of a number of different resources on campus to make sure that you transition well into an academic environment. Like a lot of the other schools, Suffolk went testing optional this year. So SAT or ACTs are not required. We actually decided this pre-pandemic, so we've been working hard for the last year and a half to implement this testing optional policy. So we will also implement that area. But again, I would also like to emphasize all the other elements. Recommendation letters are quite important for us because, it gives us a glimpse of what your teachers think about you and, how you're gonna fare in a competitive college environment. So all of these things are part of the things that we usually try to incorporate into admissions process. And I'll go ahead and stop talking now and hand it to the next person.
Thank you so much. We'll move down from the downtown Boston area, down Comm Ave, and I'd like to introduce Zoe Carter from Boston University.
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be here. Wish we could be in person, but I'm happy that we can at least share some of our expertise with you all to maybe alleviate some of your fears as you're going through this new grading scale. I think a lot of my colleagues have certainly shared many of similar facets of our review process. Holistic review is really the name of the game at Boston University, which has been talked about, really just making sure that we're looking at every piece of the application and every piece of context that each person brings to their application file. And we talk about context a lot, the context of the student and where they're coming from, where they grew up, what their family is like, what their high school environment is like. And I'm really glad that Rafi also talked about regional reading, because that's something that we definitely hold dear at Boston University. We do make sure that there is a region of the US or of the world where we're really trying to be the experts within that region. That's our job as admissions professionals, is to, yes, make contact with you as students and families. That's really important, just to make sure that we're knowing the people that are applying to our schools. But it's also really important that we understand the context of each individual school, because we don't look at one student applying from Revere High School and then put them sitting next to another student applying from like Saugus High School and say like, well, do they look similar? Do they look different? Because of course the context is already different. So that's something that's really important to us. Thankfully, I am the regional representative for kind of North Shore, Massachusetts. And so I get to work with students who are coming from Revere. And I also work with students who are applying from the states of Vermont and New Hampshire. And I don't know if anyone on this call is aware, but certainly those states have moved significantly to grading scales that are not that dissimilar from the grading scale that Revere is moving towards. So certainly this isn't something new. We do see this in other areas as well. But I'll go back to, I think, Mike's comments about the school profile. The school profile for me is a little bit like a Bible. I really use that very extensively when I'm looking at each and every transcript, because we want to make sure, as has been mentioned, that we're not penalizing a student for not taking a particular course if it wasn't available for them to take within their high school, right? And we want to make sure that the GPA that the student is achieving within their high school is understood within the context of that high school. So we spend a really good amount of time looking at the transcript alongside the school report. But as has been mentioned, of course, the other pieces of the application do carry weight as well, including those recommendations, those extracurricular involvement, the writing samples. And in terms of standardized testing, yes, Boston University is also test optional for next year, fall 2021, spring 2022. More to come in terms of our policy for subsequent years. Hopefully we'll be continuing to be test optional past that point as well. But I think, just also knowing that we understand, for students who are in high school right now, juniors and seniors especially, that these have been some trying times, some trying months. And we want to make sure that this does remain a human process, and that we are understanding the context of not being in class in person, not being able to do some of those extracurricular involvement that you may have done previously. Those are all things that we consider for every single application. And so, yeah, I think my colleagues have spoken well on this, but I'll be looking forward to see if you have any more specific questions, and best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. I think, John, we're going to open up for questions now.
Yep. I'd like to ask Ashley if all the panelists can put their video back on. so that we can do some questions and answers. Thank you. And that was very informational. I appreciate the time you've taken to come here tonight and speak with us. At this point, we are opening up for questions. There's two ways you can ask questions. You can raise your hand, at which if you go on your name, there's a little hand, you can press the button and your hand will show that you want to speak. I can give you the access to speak, or you can use the question and answer section on this Zoom and type in a question, and I can read that to, actually all the panelists would be able to see that at that point. So, moment of truth. Who wants to ask a question? Actually, while we're waiting for that, I'm going to communicate our plans for the upcoming session. So this is to give everyone an opportunity to think of a good question. We will be holding parent sessions. We're looking at them to be sort of working group sessions with almost like classes that will be doing three things with parents. One, learning about changes in grading practices. So parents are teaching about some of the grading practice changes so parents can understand actually what we're talking about and how that looks in practice. Two, you guys helping us with concerns that you have and that we can design around those concerns for the changes that will be taking place in the future, and also creating a feedback loop. Because one of the things that we want to be very clear about is the changes that are taking place today are in their initial stages. This is a long-term change for grading. To go from a traditional system to a mastery-based system takes years. And we will be taking that and making sure that it comparts with the needs of our community and isn't just something that we create on our own. It's a give and take, and your views and perspectives are important. In the chat, I'm going to put down a link that if you are interested in being part of one of those working groups, please click on the link and then you can register for that. All right, I do have a question. This is great. We have one question from, let me see who it is from. And if I mispronounced your name, please forgive me. Miss Lamba, do you have a question?
Yes, I was just wondering. Hello, can you hear me? I'm sorry, I was just on mute. I was just wondering when we need to apply for in the different schools, like the time frame.
Well, let me mediate this so we don't all speak. Does any of the panel like to answer that question? Joey?
Sure, yeah, I can go ahead. So in the senior year, there's going to be a variety of different application deadlines for each of us. We have three main deadlines. So there's going to be a lot out there, I guess. We offer early decision in 2 different rounds. So you can apply early decision in the first round by November 1st, or in the second round by January 1st, where you get your decision 6 weeks later and you are coming to Boston University. So that is the binding process. And then we offer regular decision January 1st, where students will hear their decision at the end of March, and that is non-binding. I do encourage those students who are applying to BU regular decision to consider applying by December 1st, which is actually our scholarship deadline. So I know that that's a lot to think about and conceptualize, but obviously just make sure to check in with each individual school, but they're all usually around that November, December, January timeframe.
Mike, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is it's important to kind of be aware of the different decision plans that every university has. So number one, the dates are important. You want to know which date you need to apply. The terms that you'll hear a lot of us use, there's regular decision, which essentially means you apply by that deadline. At some point in the future, you'll get a decision and you have until May 1 to say yes or no. There are earlier deadlines, one, early action, which if you apply by that deadline, you just get a decision earlier. You still have until May 1 to say yes or no. And then a lot of universities have something called early decision, which is a binding admission plan. That means that you've decided to apply to one university through early decision, and if admitted, you will enroll at that university. So it's a bit of your way of demonstrating your child's ability to say, I'm really interested in this place by applying early decision. Most early decision plans will be at private universities or colleges, most early action and will be at public universities, some private universities as well. And pretty much most universities have regular decisions. So those are the three most common plans. There are a few variations on that, but that's what you'll usually see from most of the universities out there.
Ashley, would you like to add anything?
Mike did a great job of kind of explaining what the different plans are. In terms of Bridgewater, if anyone's looking for our specific deadlines, as Mike mentioned, we're a public institution, so we don't do early decision for that same reason that we don't want to necessarily bind anyone in. So we do offer early action. That is November 15th. So if students are still interested in applying for our early action pool, there is still some time. And we typically say that they'll have a decision before the winter holidays if they are in on our early action deadline. Our regular decision deadline is February 15th. So again, we give a few extra days on that one as well. But being public, we're rolling admissions, so we will take an application pretty much whenever. So if a student wants to apply December, January, even March or April, we'll still be able to review them for most of our programs. The only one that we have that we tend to really heavily push that November deadline for is our flight training program, just because that is the one that sometimes fills up before the regular decision deadline. Everything else, though, the deadline doesn't matter too much on our end. And why I tend to encourage students is if you feel like what you're presenting to us in early action is your best foot forward, then apply early action. If you feel like it is more beneficial to show us 1 or 2 marking periods of senior year, then regular decision might be the better fit. But it really comes down to what's the better fit for the student's application file. And so that's really a conversation for the student to have with their guidance and school counselors.
Thank you. And Rafi, would you like to add anything?
Just very quickly, I'll just mention our deadlines. We have an early action process, which is November 15th, like Bridgewater State, and regular admissions is February the 15th. So we would appreciate applications for them. And we also have a bit of a, the word rolling admissions has been mentioned. We have a bit of a modified rolling admissions office process. So I just want to mention that, it is good to apply earlier, because the earlier you apply, the quicker you'll know, the quicker you get your financial aid award, and thus, the quicker you maybe can start making decisions. We will certainly always honor the May 1st notification deadline. So we'll still give you plenty of time to make a decision, as to where you're going to enroll.
Excellent. Thank you.
John, I just want to point out that our students have the opportunity to meet with college representatives all the time. Actually, Zoe and Ashley met with our students, and Ellie and Samantha from UMass Amherst, they also met with all of our students. So daily at 1:35 during our flex block, students can sign up or just show up. The links are posted on our RHS opportunity page. So there's lots of great opportunities for kids to learn about different schools.
Also, just to add to that also, and to respond to the question, all students have an individual guidance counselor who will help them through this process. And we have a platform called Naviance where students can see all of their colleges they're interested in, they're applying to, along with any and all of the deadlines, because it can get overwhelming when students are applying to numerous schools between admissions deadlines, financial aid deadlines, scholarship deadlines. So that program helps counselors and students stay accountable to one another for, to meet these deadlines, just to keep everyone on the same page. It's also how we submit our school forms to sending schools.
Excellent. That was quite the answer for Ms. Lombard. I think hopefully we covered her question. There's a couple of questions in the chat. The first one is more, I think, for me, and then the second one I'll ask the panel to answer in reverse order that we just went in. So the first question is, at the beginning, it was mentioned that this would be the grading practice for this year. Will this be the same for next year, or will there be additional changes? So this is a work in progress. This presentation tonight is about this year's grading system. However, the hope is that what the counselors and representatives are speaking to is that every year is unique, and that college admissions for that year is particular to the year itself, the students that year, and however that the schools sort of grade and sort of portray their grading systems. To answer the question, we are in the process, and what I mentioned earlier about being involved in those working groups is our review on how we want our grading system. It is not where we want it to eventually be. This is a bridge system in lots of ways. We're moving toward a full mastery-based system. which will take many years. So I would answer that there will be some changes in next year's grading system as well. Possibly. We have to see what the timeline looks like. Hopefully you'll be involved with that discussion if you like. Second question, and the panel can read it, is given that we are still in the pandemic, do you have any plans to host in-person tours this spring? And Rafi, we'll go in the opposite order. Would you like to start with that?
Sure. Yep, Suffolk did opt to allow for that. So we actually have been offering in-person tours for the last month or so, but it is obviously a lot different than what it usually is. We only allow students that are coming from the Massachusetts approved list of states who can avoid the quarantine. We only take one family per tour, so it has certainly limited the capacity. You have to provide us a self-attestation when you arrive on campus so that we know that you don't have any symptoms, which we are all doing. All our students who are on campus, everyone, faculty, staff, we all have to attest that we don't have any symptoms. And certainly the tour doesn't look exactly the same. We won't bring you into the dorms. Students are living there and we cannot allow any guests in, as well as certain buildings are out of bounds. So we just kind of talk about stuff, a little bit outside. We will bring you into some of the buildings that have determined to be safe by our emergency response team. Other than that, we won't go. It won't be a full tour. I do want to put in a plug for all our virtual opportunities because they're plentiful, and I'm sure some of my other colleagues are going to be talking about, including some live opportunities for you to interact with our students, and talk to them directly in a virtual environment.
Thank you very much. Ashley, would you like to speak to that?
We're very similar at Bridgewater State. We started doing in-person tours back in September, so we're a couple months into the process. And similar to Rafi, it's one tour guide to one pod. So it's typically people within the same household that are on that tour. We have them check in outside, so we are really encouraging that outside aspect, masks at all points, even for our tour guides and our visitors on campus, proper social distancing while on campus. We might have one or two buildings that we've been approved to go into at this point, but for the most part, it is all outside. But it really does at least allow the student to see the campus. And it's obviously not as active as it typically is either, just because we have had some students choose all remote for the fall and for the spring as well. So you're not going to see as much activity as a typical semester. So I tend to tell students to go in with knowing that piece, and also for our student safety, we are also not showing residence halls. So very similar process. We are asking, everyone to be from those designated safe states. Anyone from even Rhode Island has to show us a negative COVID test. Everyone does have to pre-register, so we can't take any walk-ins at this point in time. So you've already registered for that particular slot. What we are trying to do is run multiple tours at one time slot. So maybe we'll offer 5 tours at a 10 o'clock slot with 5 different tour guides to try and allow for more students to have the opportunity to see campus. But we do have a really great virtual tour that launched in January before everything happened. So we're very lucky we got that together and up online before everything happened. We do have live student panels with our afternoons at BSU. So if students are looking for that student interaction piece, that is another option for the Zoom world to be able to get that student human aspect that might be missing if you're just scrolling through a website or clicking through a virtual tour. So I definitely do encourage that piece as well. Especially, it's great to hear from students because they're where you're going to be. And so they can really be a testament to what the student experience is like at school. And so with tours, I really feel like part of it's to see the campus and be like, is this a great community? Is this really where I fit? But also for you to be able to talk to a current student and be like, what do you like about the school? Why did you pick to go here? And so you still are able to have those student moments, maybe in a little bit non-traditional of a setting.
And actually, if I can ask a quick question to you and Rafi before I get back to Mike and Zoe, I recall that, is it true that getting a campus visit helps in the admissions process? Does that assist students in any ways as far as their application?
So we track it a little bit on our end, but it's not, a deal breaker either way. I'd say what's more important on our end, especially this year, is for the student to do an interview, to have that one-on-one component with the counselor. And we do code students that do go to interviews. So students who are at visits or come for a tour, we do code them. as having visited the campus or visited a counselor, but we do have a special interview code. And so I definitely tend to advocate for students to demonstrate interest in that manner because we have a separate code for interviewed students.
Thank you. And before I get to Mike, Rafi, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, very quick. It's same as what Ashley was mentioning. We do track interest, and I feel that it is responsible for us to say that, universities are doing that. Now, for us, it's not going to be the main element. It's not something that we're, carrying super heavily in the admissions process, but it certainly helps. So I would say, demonstrate your interest, and you can do that many ways. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a visit. It could be an interview. It could be, reaching out for an email. It could be a number of different ways that you can show, healthy level of interest in a particular school.
Thank you. Mike?
So we're a little bit different at UMass Amherst. We have not had any official on-campus visits since March. Part of the trouble is we get tens of thousands of visitors through our programs every year. So if we had one family in a time slot, we would have too many people that were disappointed that they weren't offered an opportunity. So that's why we made that decision with the consultation of our public health officials. So there are no in-person opportunities to actually have a walking tour or attend an information session or anything like that. Everything is virtual on our website. That said, our campus is open. It's a public space, so students and families are welcome to come to Amherst and walk around the UMass campus. The one note of caution is our university has used this opportunity to do a significant amount of construction. And so I would avoid a weekday because the construction crews are everywhere. Sidewalks are ripped up, buildings are being added on to, built up from scratch. So there's a lot happening. Saturdays and Sundays are a lot quieter. So if you want to come out, that'd be the time to just walk around again. Public health things like 6 feet apart, masks at all times on campus, or public security will kind of come up and ask you to do that. Virtual visit opportunities though, Monday through Friday, we have information sessions online. We have conversations with current UMass students. We have a very robust social media accounts where we profile students and faculty and different resources on campus. So in many cases, there's even more opportunities than there probably were in the past to engage with us, just not in person. But you can learn a lot about UMass online and then maybe find some time on a weekend to come out and see the campus on your own and walk around.
And what would you say to demonstrating your interest? Is there a certain? Yeah.
Thanks for adding that, John. We do not use demonstrated interest in any way. We do not track. We obviously know if you register for an event and you participate in it, we don't connect that to your application whatsoever. We don't connect how many times a student is emailed or anything like that. Your demonstrated interest is applying. So for UMass, your application is your way of expressing interest. We'll offer you admission, and then you have that chance to say yes or no to us. So demonstrated interest, how many times you visit, email, virtually or otherwise, none of that factors into the decision at UMass.
Thank you. Thank you. And Zoe?
Yeah, I would say our policies mirror UMass pretty closely. So we do not have any in-person tours and haven't for several months, and not sure when we're going to be able to open back up again for tours, unfortunately. But as Mike mentioned, we are very much a public space. So because Revere is obviously very close by, if students or families wanted to come to campus and do a self-guided tour, there is nothing preventing you from doing so. And certainly we've actually seen our self-guided tour numbers going up a lot in these past couple months as students are eager to see campus in person. So just be careful, as Mike mentioned too, making sure that you are wearing a mask and being as safe as possible if you're coming to campus. But as has been mentioned, our virtual offerings are, yes, robust. Robust is one word. We have programming actually almost every single day. So even on the weekends, we have programming, especially for folks if they're working, want to be able to tune into the information sessions. We do have live tours, which I did a live tour. That was actually pretty fun. So it's not like you have to choose your own adventure, but you would actually be walking through campus live with 2 students virtually. And those are offered pretty much every day at different times. And as has been mentioned, this is our first year offering informational interviews with current students. And that is just a fantastic opportunity to I think, really get a sense for whether or not you are going to be a good fit on our campus, if BU is the right fit for you. I think the current student is absolutely the person and the best resource for you to be tapping into ultimately for all of this information. And in terms of tracking interest, similar to UMass, certainly we know, we can see if you've done some of these events. We don't use it in the admissions process. However, I always like to say that these things are helpful for you in this process, ultimately, just because we do have a supplemental question on the Common Application about, why BU. A lot of schools have that traditional why X school question, and it's usually a pretty short response. For us, it's a 250-word limit. And so some people might think like, oh, it's just kind of a throwaway answer. Like, I don't really need to spend very much time on this, but that for us is sort of demonstrated interest. The amount of time and attention that you put towards that response and the detail that you put into it can be really a big factor, regardless of what programming you've done. But I do think going to some of these programs can really help you write a good YBU response. So I think that can be helpful. And so, yeah, definitely take advantage of all these virtual offerings. I know it can be overwhelming to do all these Zoom things, but you can go and visit schools that are so much further away now virtually. So take advantage of that as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we don't have any more questions. We'll wait a few more minutes for questions, and if anybody wants to ask a question. Are there anything else that the panel would like to speak to or address? Or maybe our guidance team? I don't want to put anybody in the spot, but one of the things I've been taking notes. I have a son who's a senior in high school, so this has been extremely informative for me. I can't wait to speak to him. I think there's so many different things that we don't really know if it's real or not. Like I truly believe that demonstrating interest played a significant role, and I'm not saying it doesn't play a role, but I was under that impression. So I appreciate the clarity that was brought to tonight. Well, we don't want to keep everyone here. It is getting late in the evening. I want to once again thank our panel for this presentation. It was extremely informative. We truly appreciate you guys taking the time and speaking to us tonight. Obviously, Tiffany and Diana for setting this up and structuring it and creating this presentation. You guys are awesome. And I like all the attendees who were able to observe this. This is streaming live and it will be recorded so it can be viewed at a later date on the Revere School Committee YouTube channel. Once again, thank you very much and I hope everyone has a great